Welcome back, Kwik Brain. Today we're going to talk about fasting and your brain. And very excited to have back on our show our very first guest of our podcast, Dave Asprey. Many of you know him, he's Silicon Valley tech entrepreneur, father of biohacking, top podcast health host, New York Times bestselling author. And we're going to talk about his new book, which is Fast This Way. Welcome back on the show, Dave.
Look at that subtle product placement.
I love it, buddy. So first of all, thank you for just being, one of my coaches, supporting me with my health and, optimizing my brain, all these years. I mentioned that you were our very first, we've done over 200 episodes. You are our very first guest.
What an honor.
Appreciate you having you back. And so tell me about this new book is, fasting. How is this special? How is this different? Was it hard to write or?
It's really easy to write a book on fasting. In fact, here, I'll do one for you right now. Don't eat for a while. And then here's a bunch of studies from PubMed that says it's good for you. Done. Okay. And so I didn't want to write another fasting book because there are actually some really good books out there on fasting that tell you, here's why to fast. It's good for your brain. It makes you younger. You lose weight. Okay. We know this, yet most people either aren't fasting or they're making mistakes in fasting that I've seen repeated over and over in my own health evolution, losing 100 pounds, turning my brain back on. So I wanted to write a book that makes it so someone who's like I was when I weighed 300 pounds, you're not going to just drink water and for breakfast and then be able to function, especially in a stressful time like this one, with kids hanging off each arm, trying to get your work done, and all the media spreading fear and all that stuff. It just doesn't jive. So there's 3 fasting hacks, and one of those 3 has never been written about before in the world of fasting that you can do to turn off hunger. But what I did, Jim, I realized I was afraid of being alone and I was afraid of being hungry. So I hired a shaman. This is going back quite a few years, right before I even started Bulletproof. And I said, drop me off in a cave in the middle of the desert, no food, no people for 10 miles in any direction. And I'm going to have to deal with this. And I write that story in the book, along with the science, along with how do you actually do it? What supplements can you have? What foods could you have when you are fasting? And you realize fasting means going without, and you go without alcohol. It's a type of fast. You can go without water if you want to. It's called a dry fast. There's many different ways, but when you're like, how do I feel safe going without something? You realize that much of the challenge of fasting is mental. And it's not just about willpower. It's about belief systems. It's about the voice that I had in my head that said, if I don't eat 6 meals a day, I'll go into starvation mode. And I'm already fat. And there's another voice in my head that says, if you don't eat every couple hours, you'll act like a jerk, because I did get hypoglycemia. And like, how can I go from that world to being willing and able to try an intermittent fast? It doesn't work. And for people who are experienced fasters, they're doing the same thing that I did when I was a vegan, the same thing that people do when they go keto. Is if some of it's good, more must be better. And all of a sudden, you see women hit the wall first, and then you see men hit the wall about 2 to 4 weeks after women do. And this is what happens if you over fast. It's similar to what happens if you over exercise. So for men, after 6-8 weeks of over fasting, and maybe this is just intermittent fasting every morning before you're ready, maybe it's doing progressively longer fasts, what you end up with is like, wow, I wake up in the morning, I feel like I didn't sleep. If you're measuring your sleep with a ring or something, you're like, oh, it looks like I'm not getting very much deep sleep. I wonder what's going on, but it can't be fasting because I know how good I feel on it. And I already proved to myself it's good. So maybe I'll fast even more to fix it. And then you find you're waking up without a kickstand anymore. You're like, oh, that's not good. Maybe I'll fast even more. And then your hair starts to get thinner and you're like, what's going on there? Well, and with women, it's different. It happens sooner. And the first one is I'm not sleeping well. And then it's my cycle isn't working very well. It's off. It's either more painful or it's less existent, but I can tell my body isn't working the way it's supposed to work. And then comes the hair loss or hair thinning as well. And so there's got to be a way to teach people how to get started without pain, without acting like a jerk, and people who learn how to fast, how to not overdo it. And that's what's in this book, along with the concept of a spiritual fast, which is different than fasting for your metabolism.
Which is like, so it's not just about food.
It's not just about food. Uh, In fact, the hardest fast of all is one that's in the last chapter of the book. And I challenge people on this. I say, try fasting from hate. Just go 4 hours, an intermittent hate fast without thinking one bad thought about anyone or anything. Just try it. It's really hard to do. And you'll catch yourself, oh my goodness, what's going on in there? And this is why fasting is such a powerful tool. It can give you energy to show up today for whatever you want to do. So if you do your morning right during a fast, if you had your dinner right the night before, like, I have so much energy, I have clarity that I didn't have when I had a normal breakfast. So I'm better than I was. But that energy could go into creating, go into being on a podcast, writing a book, whatever, or that energy can go into training your brain to be better, doing the deep personal development work, right? Or even studying your incredible body of work, right? I have so much brain energy. Now I want to learn because I have the energy to learn. But if you're tired all the time, you don't want to learn. And if you try to learn, it's like pushing a rock uphill. You can do it, but man, you're tired. And it's that freedom that I wanted to teach people. And what I'm doing, Jim, for this book, for the first time ever, I realized I've been a teacher for 5 years at the University of California. I love teaching. It's one of the ways I learn. And I kind of fell into this. I'm going to write a book with everything as well organized as I can think of. And I'm going to put it out there and I'm going to expect you to read it. I'm going to incent you to read it. But then I don't do the teaching part of it. So this is the first time I've ever said, all right, if you buy the book, I will teach you for 2 weeks for free. I'm going to step you and thousands of other people through all the different types of fasting. And we're going to end it with a 1 or a 2 day spiritual fast where I'm going to teach you the meditation stuff that you do. When, all right, I am going to feel the pain of fasting. I'm going to look at the voices in my head. I'm going to do the deep work, which is going to do the other side of fasting. Fasting can teach you to make more energy in your cells, which is great. I have more energy now. But what if fasting also could teach you to have less negative thoughts, less wasteful thoughts? You're like, whoa, more energy, less wasted energy, superpowers. And there's this study in Fast This Way I found that 15% or more of the average person's thoughts every day are about what's for their next meal. And if I can teach you to turn off hunger during a fast so you stop thinking about food because you don't care about food, you get 15% more thoughts every day to do whatever you want with them. Like, that's how important this is.
And you're not feeling hangry and all the lack. So you can actually, in a way, whether it's physically or spiritually, emotionally, you could have more with less in a
You
way.
can have more with less. And we're not even talking about cutting calories during a fast. You can if you want to, but for a lot of people, it's a bad idea. What you're talking about doing is changing the timing of the food.
Okay.
And when you do that, magic happens. And what works best for people is an early dinner.
Hmm.
And if you can eat dinner 5:30, 6 instead of at 7 or 8, you get a couple more hours before bed. You'll sleep better that night. But then think about it. You've got 4 hours after dinner. You go to bed at 10. You wake up whenever you wake up. Like, hold on, if I slept 8 hours and I fasted 4 hours after dinner, I already did 12 hours without food. You're just going to have an early lunch and you've just done a 16-hour fast. It's not that hard to do. And so the idea, whoa, mind blown, 16 hours versus you can skip breakfast, you'll be okay, unless you're like I was. And I remember ending a meeting when I was in my late 20s in Silicon Valley. Like, guys, I know it's 11:45. We're supposed to go till noon. I'm ending the meeting because if I don't have lunch right now, I'm going to eat one of you. And I just like, okay, meeting's done. We're going to the cafeteria because I couldn't hack it. And I look back at that, like right now, as we're recording this, I'm 24 hours into a fast just because it doesn't cost me anything. Like, my brain's on, I'm not thinking about food, I'm not hangry, I'm not low energy. And there's a freedom that comes from that. But I know that if I fasted for 48 hours every 3 days, it would actually make me weak. And it's that idea, what's the right amount and what's the right type? And what do you do during a fast so you're never hungry? And there's new stuff that's never been written in any fasting book that's in Fast This Way.
So it's not in a way just what you eat or what you're not eating. It's also when. It's also, it's when you're eating. It's also why you're eating. It's also how
Hmm.
you're eating, I'm sure, as well.
Yes.
And so for new people so those who are listening who are new to fasting, what are just, maybe you could review some of the benefits, especially cognitive, that come from things like fasting this way.
Every spiritual practice on earth that I could find has some form of fasting involved to put you in a special state. And after about 2 to 3 days of eating nothing, you suddenly have this incredible energy and clarity of thought. And the reason that happens is twofold. And one of them is that things you eat every day make your brain weak. You don't know what they are necessarily, but tons of plants have toxins in them. So they have good stuff and they have bad stuff, and the bad stuff slows you down. When you're fasting, you don't get any toxins from food because you didn't get any food. So that's one part of clarity. But the bigger part is that after about 3 days, you go into ketosis, which is when your body says, I have nothing left to eat. I better start burning my fat stores. And when you burn fat instead of the normal sugar that your body burns, fat contains more electrons than sugar does. It has more energy. That's why fat's higher calorie. And when the brain's burning fat, the neurons have a party. In fact, they've done studies where you put a neuron in a petri dish that has ketones, which is fat burning, and it has glucose, which is sugar burning, and they'll use all the ketones before they'll touch the sugar. So from a brain perspective, like I literally had more horsepower in my brain. My brain had more energy. But if you do ketosis all the time or you overfast and you never eat carbs, you're going to run into a problem in the brain. That's because the kind of the jealous Robin to the Batman of the neurons is your glial cells. And these are parts of the brain that are not the neurons, but their job is to maintain the neurons, to keep them healthy, and to actually prune them and help them grow. So they're the caretakers. They're the immune system in the brain. They want sugar more than they want ketones. This isn't an excuse to eat sugar, but it means that even if you think keto is the best thing since sliced bread, keto bread with no calories or no carbs or whatever, what you're going to find is that over time, keto makes the brain weak because you stop maintaining the brain, which is why in the Bulletproof Diet, in the stuff I've written for 10 years now, you go into ketosis, you go out of ketosis. And when you're out of ketosis, you can eat MCT oil that gives you enough ketones that your neurons are always partying. And this is why Bulletproof Coffee became famous. It's not because I'm a great marketer. I think it's because people drink it like, oh my God, I felt that clarity. And it's the clarity of fasting, but it's because of the ingredients that are in there. And what we want to do is more energy in, less toxins in equals a lot more freedom.
So clearly there are physical, mental benefits, for performance, help you to potentially live longer also as well. Those cultures being
Yeah. The longevity benefits of fasting are pretty well understood now, and they also support brain function, which is really neat. So when you fast, even just an intermittent fast, and you don't eat any protein during the fast, you can have a little bit of fat during a fast, and it'll still be a fast, which is something that's hotly debated. But we can go to that later if you want to. You still get the benefits of fasting, and one of the big benefits there is called autophagy. And this is when the body finds old cells that don't work very well, and says, I guess I'm in a world where sometimes there isn't enough food. Therefore, I am going to get rid of those cells and replace them with healthy young cells. And it'll do that for whole cells, or it'll do it for mitochondria, which is called mitophagy. Mitochondria are the power plants of cells. And the neurons in your brain have 15,000 of these ancient bacteria power plants per neuron on average. The rest of the cells in your body have a few hundred to a couple thousand, except for around the heart. So the heart and the brain they're studded with energy. So you get more benefits from fasting when the brain says, oh, I have some parts of my energy production system that are weak, but not entirely useless. I'll just let them stick around because there's always food. It doesn't matter. And when your brain's like, oh no, there might not be food. Let me get rid of my weak parts. And then even when you are eating, you have a better functioning brain because you actually told the brain to clean up its act.
So are some fasts, you've mentioned multiple fasts, some on water, intermittent fasting. Are some fasts better than others? Or does it depend on your
Well,
is?
It depends on who you are. It depends on if you're a man or a woman. It depends on your age. Depends on your goals, your metabolic fitness. And one thing that we do know is that in mouse studies, they give the mice only water. And there are some fasting purists who say you can't have any calories and you can only have water during a fast or it's not a fast. This is not actually the way fasting has been done throughout history. They always drink tea at a minimum because when you get polyphenols, these colored compounds in coffee, tea, chocolate, fruit, et cetera, polyphenols are good for you even when you're fasting. So water only is just because that's all the mice had because they're mice. And there isn't a need to do that almost ever. But if you want to, you can. It's just harder. And I would beg you, if you're going to do a water only fast, at least put some sea salt or some Himalayan salt in there. You're going to need it, especially on a multi-day fast. But there are purists who say even that is wrong. So there's many different ways to do it. The minimum effective fast is 14 hours without food. It's better to go 16. But if 14 is what works for you and you're just getting started, that's just fine. And the other thing that's really important is just because it worked one day doesn't mean you should do the same thing the next day. And the idea of over fasting is exactly the same as overtraining. And we're like, oh, it makes sense. If I wake up every morning and I just exercise, then I know I'll do it. And it's so logical. But then you never have time to recover. And the type of exercise that works best is go for a walk and move every day. And then every 2 or even ideally every 3 days, do something really hard for exercise and spend the next 2 days recovering, putting on muscle, shedding fat, and then do it again. It's just from a habit perspective, we want to do the same thing every day. Women oftentimes do not succeed doing intermittent fasting every day, but some of them do. And my advice is ramp up slowly and make sure that you don't hit the wall. And the wall is, well, I'm not sleeping well the way I used to. And most of us will say, I know that fasting is so good, I'm probably not fasting enough, right? And we go through that mental loop that says, oh, great, now I'm having problems with my cycle. I'll fast even more. And oh, now my hair's falling out. I'll fast even more. What the body wanted you to do was have some breakfast already. And it's the same thing we do with keto diets. It's the same thing you do if you go vegan. You'll feel great for 6 weeks and then you're convinced you have to be even more vegan, even though you're declining and declining. I was a vegan for a long time and that happened to me as well. So what I want people to do is not make the same mistakes with fasting that they made with keto and they made with the vegan diet and they made with exercise. You don't have to overdo it. It's a tool. It's what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. But if you do what doesn't kill you and makes you stronger every single day, it won't make you stronger anymore. And I really want that to be part of our fasting conversation. It's okay to fast every day if it's actually working and you can measure it. Otherwise, every other day is fine. Skip breakfast every other day. And that's a great way to get started, especially if you have 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds to lose. And you can just be kind to yourself when you fast. And I think that's missing.
I love that that contribution into this because with moderation, including moderation, but having flexibility and
Yeah.
kindness where you're compassionate with yourself because you beat yourself up. Some people are so stressed on certain diets that it negates any benefit that they're getting from those foods.
You're stressed and then you're just thinking about food all the time. And when I did my 18 months of working out an hour and a half a day, 6 days a week, eating a low fat, low calorie diet, I was so desperate to lose the weight. I didn't want to have another knee surgery. Uh, at the end of that, I still had a 46-inch waist. I still weighed 300 pounds. I could max out all the machines at the gym. I was still fat. And I was so discouraged. And the amount of time that I spent just thinking about food, just resisting, burning all my willpower out. What could I have done with that energy if I'd have known how to do it right? I
Mm.
could have done a lot. So you can waste a lot of energy with a bad diet.
So we talked about the benefits that come from fasting. We talked about having flexibility and not being hard on yourself. And it's going to be different for different people depending on their metabolism, their gender, their physiology. What about exercise? Can people exercise? I mean, obviously, people should go to a health practitioner, have this monitored. But do you recommend? Is it okay to exercise while
Especially during an intermittent fast, it's actually great. And there's something in the body called mTOR, which is a technical term, mammalian target of rapamycin. And this is something that causes your body to grow, to put on muscle. And if you eat too much protein on a regular basis, you chronically raise mTOR, which increases cancer risk and lowers your odds of living. So the best practice is to keep your mTOR relatively low and then occasionally spike it really high. And mTOR is like a spring. You have to push it down. So in Fast This Way, I write about tripling down on mTOR. And the way you do that, there's three things that studies show suppress mTOR so it'll come surging forth. One of them is fasting. So if you fast, you've already suppressed mTOR. The second thing that suppresses mTOR is coffee in multiple studies. So if you fast, you wake up, you have a cup of coffee, you've done two of the three things. The third thing that suppresses mTOR is exercise. And then when you're done exercising, when you eat, your mTOR spikes. So if you've pressed it as far down as you can because you fasted, you worked out at the end of your fast, and you had coffee during your fast, when you exercise, it might not be your personal best. It doesn't matter because the improvement you'll get afterwards, it's crazy.
And then what about like, so novelty is good, you're giving your body exercise. What about nutrition? Obviously you're not doing food. Do you recommend any supplements to support the fast?
There's a whole chapter on supplements during fasting. And when you say you're not doing any food, it turns out that protein and carbs are the things that break a fast. You can have low to moderate amounts of certain kinds of fat and you still get the benefits of fasting. So the three big fasting hacks that suppress hunger via different mechanisms are black coffee. Pretty much everyone fasting should have black coffee, unless you're very sensitive to it or something, because it makes fast work better. The second thing that you should have, if you want more energy during a fast, is you can do bulletproof coffee. I'm not trying to sell more bulletproof coffee. People have had plenty of it and it helps people lose weight, et cetera, but it won't break your fast. And you put a small amount of butter, some MCT oil, and black coffee that's good quality, like the lab tested stuff that I make. And the reason you do that is that when you blend butter and MCT oil into coffee, it changes the water in the coffee. And this is according to research from the University of Washington, Gerald Pollack's lab. And normally you drink water, your body has to make body heat to transform the water from the kind of water you drink into the kind of water inside your cells. Mm-hmm. But if you do that with a blender ahead of time, you don't get cold and shaky during your fast because the water that comes in can be immediately used inside your cells. And this is why, even if it's a quarter teaspoon of butter and some MCT oil, it'll work. MCT oil can't be stored in the body as fat. It has to be burned as energy, and it helps your body be trained to be in ketosis. So you make your bulletproof coffee, you drink that, like, oh, that worked. The third thing that is new to the world of fasting, no one's written about this, but I did a lot of research on it, is prebiotic fiber. It suppresses hunger like no one's business, and it doesn't raise insulin. It cannot be digested by you, but it feeds your good gut bacteria during a fast. And if you put some scoops of that in your coffee or just in water, it has very little flavor. You feel incredibly full, so you don't think about food all the time when you're fasting. And if you do all three of those, you're like, wow, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. I guess I could eat, but I'm just really not that hungry. And it's very liberating and it's actually good for you. So those are some things. And there's a whole chapter on supplements you can take and supplements not to take during a fast. And some of the supplements I call the barfy 4, because if you take these during a fast, you are not going to like what happens. And the first one is B complex. Vitamin B on an empty stomach is a bad idea because you're going to get nausea from it. And multivitamins, same problem. You take those on an empty stomach, you're just not going to like how you feel. And it makes the fast much worse. It's not good for you. The next one is fish oil. You take that during a fast. It's okay to have a gram or two of fat like that. The problem is that fish oil is, for most people, really not something for an empty stomach. But if you're using the fasting hacks I just talked about, if you're using either the prebiotic fiber or the bulletproof approach, you can have some fish oil because there's enough fat in there to stimulate absorption. And the final thing is if you take a mineral supplement, like a multi-mineral on an empty stomach, it's likely going to cause nausea as well, especially if it contains iron. So you avoid those during a fast. And then during a fast, there's 2 supplements that are transformative. And one of them involves the brain. The other one involves the system of the body. And when you fast, you burn fat. When you burn fat, everything that's in the fat in your body gets liberated. And your body uses your fat as a store for PCBs, pesticides, extra estrogen, heavy metals, and a whole bunch of other pollutants, including mold toxins. So if you were to burn a bunch of fat and that stuff is now recirculating, it's going to affect your mental clarity and it's going to affect inflammation. So you take activated charcoal during a fast. Everyone who fasts should be taking activated charcoal. And activated charcoal will absorb all sorts of things, including those toxins and any medications you take, so you don't do them at the same time. It's a widely available, affordable supplement. I think I made it popular now as one of the first supplements I made for Bulletproof. And it's been used for thousands of years around the world for GI disturbances, but you're going to use it during fasting because it cleans up toxins from your fat and it cleans up toxins from your gut, which affect your mental clarity. They're called lipopolysaccharides. It absorbs those as well. So it's kind of a magic bullet for when you're fasting. And the final thing, there's actually a dozen more, but the final thing I want to talk about on your show today, Jim, is called proteolytic enzymes. And in the book, I talk about several different formulas that clearly don't break a fast. But since your pancreas isn't making protein digesting enzymes because you're not eating protein, it makes protein digesting enzymes that are different that go into the body and help to break down old scar tissue and break down immune molecules and junk proteins that need to go. Well, what if you took a lot more of those enzymes in pills? Now the body's like, I have so much enzyme capacity right now. I'm going to break down all of these things that I wanted to break down anyway. So you accelerate the healing process of fasting. And of course, the side effect of that is the body works better. The brain always works better. So the people say you can only have water during a fast. I'm like, you guys are missing out on all these benefits because you could have less toxins during your fast. You could have more enzyme production during a fast. You're going to get a higher return on the investment of the time and energy you put into a fast when you just think about it, not from a dogmatic perspective, but from a, I want to get the best results I can. It's like your approach to learning. Like you could just slog through it, or you could learn how to learn and you can get it in less time. And I think you should get the most benefits from a fast you can get in the least possible time because we're all busy.
That's a powerful stack. When you're doing these, let's say you're applying this towards an intermittent fast and you're doing the prebiotics, are you doing the charcoal and the enzymes would you do that in the morning on an empty stomach or with your coffee?
You would separate them by an hour or two. I like to do the enzymes first, and then sometime mid-morning, I'll take the charcoal.
Can you incorporate or would you recommend probiotics as well or no?
You can. And if you're looking to change your gut bacteria, it works just fine to do that.
Amazing. So finally, as we wrap up here, what is one thing then you would recommend our listener besides going to fastestway.com and getting their book, as well as the tutorial, which is amazing that you're actually going to walk people through this. What's the next step for them to do if they want to move, not something extreme, but one small, simple step?
Think about fasting as learning how to feel safe while going without. You can fast from junk food. It's called eating healthier. You can fast from carbs. It's called the keto diet. You can fast from animals. It's called the vegan diet. It won't work well for a long time. You can fast from alcohol and you can fast from hate. You just learn to go without something that you feel like you need. Your body is lying to you. You will die from a lack of sleep way before you'll die from a lack of food. You feel like you're going to die if you don't eat tomorrow. You have at least 3 months of capacity before you'd starve. So the body is not telling you the truth here. And fasting is the idea of actually being closer to reality and understanding that what you think you need, you don't need, you just want. And learning that creates great peace inside of you.
Mm-hmm. Fasting, it's not exclusive to food or alcohol. Be fasting from social media, fasting from energy vampires, taking a break to disconnect.
I talk about fasting from porn and fasting from overstimulating sexual stuff. I talk about all the kinds of fasts in the book because there's these 3 voices in our head that all life forms have, which is run away from scary things, whether or not they're actually going to kill you. Your body doesn't know. And then eat everything because there might be a famine. Your body doesn't know. And then basically you must reproduce the species or you'll die, which is why everyone that we've ever met has gone on some dates they probably shouldn't have gone on. And those are voices in our head that are not true. And the fourth voice in our head becomes free when we lower the screaming from those first three. And it's all life forms do this. They support each other. We are wired in our cells to support our other humans and to be kind to each other. And the proof of this is yogurt. Bacteria who have no brains whatsoever will support each other and form an ecosystem. Kombucha, forests, everything around us, all life does this. We do it too. It's just hard to do it if you're afraid all the time and you're hungry all the time and there's no love in your life. So you got to look at those voices in your head, because if you believe them and you don't consider them, you will not show up in the world the way you can. And when you get it right, the level of energy involved in screaming inside your head goes down. The physical amount of energy goes up, and that creates a huge amount of mental space to improve the way your brain works.
Well put. Dave Asprey, how do people find out more?
Go to fastthisway.com, send me your receipt, and I will teach you personally, live Q&As, the whole 9 yards. I've never done this before. I'm not looking to charge you anything. Just buy the book and read the book and share the book. That's all I'm asking, because I think this is so important. And I promise you that fasting is cheaper than buying breakfast. You win no matter what you do.
Yeah. Take a screenshot, everyone, of this, because remember, when you hear something once, you learn it once. But when you share it and you teach it, you get to learn it again. You get to learn it twice. So take a screenshot, tag Dave Asprey, tag myself, and post it, and share your feedback if you're gonna take these steps. And let me know if you got the book. And make sure you go to fastthisway.com. You get your copy. And Dave, thanks again for being on our show.
Thank you, Jim.
Hi, Kwik Brain. It's your brain coach. I want to thank you so much for watching this video. 3 things to do. Number 1, make sure you share this, because when you teach something, you get to learn it twice. Update your learning so you can update other people's learning as well. Number 2, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you don't miss a thing, because if you miss a video, you miss a lot. And finally, make sure you hit that bell so you're notified and you find out when we put out the latest and the greatest. One extra thing, if you want really close attention, then text me. Here is my phone number, 310-299-9362. Did you remember that number? 310-299-9362. Shoot me a text and we'll stay in touch. Ask me your burning question. And I wish your days be full of lots of life, lots of love, lots of laughter, and always lots of learning. I'll see you in our next video.